Hey there, listener. Welcome to the Deep Share Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Rouse, and for the last couple of decades, I've slowly been opening my eyes to a very different world than the one I grew up hearing about. And the more conversations I have with interesting people, the more mystifying this world becomes. So without further ado, let's get deep.
We've got science to celebrate! Demons bliss now! After what, baby? Come on!
There is rebellion in the wind. It will crush.
Everything I've said is true. It's real.
Dinosaur fossils? God put those here to test our faith.
A damn lie. I saw them with my own eye.
Did IQs just drop sharply while I was away?
We did illusions, man! None of it is true!
I'm not insane.
This is mass madness, you maniacs! In God's name, you people are the real thing! We are the illusion!
But yeah, it's good to finally sit down and chat with you, man. This is really cool. Everybody meet Rafa Martinelli. And good to have you here, man.
Yeah, thank you. And on my side, I'm going to introduce you as well. So this is Andy Rouse from the Deep Share podcast, as you can see on his beautiful background. And I reached out to Andy because I've seen him on Andreas Exertus' show. I think it's Woo Wednesday is what it's called, or maybe it's on the Sync stuff.
I'm usually on Sync Tank, but I did appear on a Woo Wednesday recently, and that was a lot of fun. Yeah, the topic was crazy, so it was good stuff.
Yeah, those are very fun to watch. Andreas is a good moderator for those things with so much thought and so many people with interesting things to share.
And he does it really well.
Yeah, I reached out to Andy because I think the topics that he brings up or his perspective is really interesting, and I think my audience is going to be interested in that. And I think that we're gonna resonate, or we already kind of resonate. We haven't known each other for more than 5 to 10 minutes, and we're already
it's already gravy, baby.
Yeah. So
absolutely, man. I thought your YouTube page was fascinating. I love the interviews that you've been doing, and a lot of familiar faces on there too, which was really cool. We clearly resonate with the same general-minded people, you know.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that. I find yours very interesting too. The one that closed the deal for me was you had Freddy Silva on. I think it's one of the recent episodes talking. I think it's I remember I forget, but I think it's about the giants or about they came from the north. I think it's the title.
Yes.
And the thing about giants is such a a weird topic. I mean, I'm really interested recently, but it feels like on the one hand it feels totally ridiculous and impossible, but then again it's like there's something there. And maybe you want to comment on that, but before we started recording, you mentioned something about your research and something that your research is taking you somewhere in particular. And I don't know, I'm curious maybe if you would like to talk a little bit about that.
Oh man, that's a rabbit hole in itself for sure. I'm digging into a lot of history, and I come from a very psychedelic background. That's kind of how I got my initial taste of, hey, things aren't as they appear to be, right? So that was a long time ago, about 20 something years ago now. But throughout this whole time, you know, I've always had those lessons learned from psychedelics in mind while I dig through spirituality and history and symbolism and conspiracy theory, all of it, you know. And one of those lessons is always, is it as it appears? And is it being presented in the way that is real, you know? And this question, it's endless in some ways, right? When we talk about the giant, like Freddie and I on that episode, we're mainly talking about, the reason why I love talking to Freddie is because he gets, you know, boots on the ground and talks to the native people wherever he goes, and he wants the stories that are orally handed down from generation to generation. And, you know, juxtaposing that perspective with the accepted version of history is a good way to kind of, it's like alchemy in a way. We're getting this third mixing at the top where we get to see like, okay, well, this is what all the stories are. And this is what is written in all the textbooks handed out by the state. This is the difference, and here's the similarities and stuff. So Freddie and I were talking about of course, the very illusory, very mysterious light beings and shiny ones, or the elves, the giants, the fairies, Anunnaki, right? Ancient aliens. We could go all over the world and call it something different. And I had certain concepts in mind having him back on for that episode, because I had gotten turned on to just a whole nother set of data about ancient history. It always seems like the ancient history that's been like hidden or is finally coming out is never, ever from European countries or Scandinavian countries. No, we figured all that out. That's all just recent. No big deal. And I started to find a lot of information about ancient people from those northern areas, and Freddie was one of my sources. And following his work, and what he did was he showed me how the same serpents or snakes that were kicked out of Ireland by St. Patrick, that wonderful little allegory about the Druids, are the same people that were called different things all the way back towards the Middle East and the Persian Gulf. So we're talking about the Tuatha De Danann in Ireland, these tall, white, blue-eyed, red-haired beings that are written in our folklore as mythical, mysterious beings that aren't real, that are from some other realm, right? And we get a lot of our spiritual basis for looking into folklore and religion itself. We kind of confirm our ineffable experiences that we have on the other side, whatever you want to call it, with stories that have been written for hundreds of years, thousands of years. So the way we perceive it is all it's about for me. And that's why that question always comes back. Is it how it appears? And so I started digging into etymology and following the linguistics from place to place, and the cultural traditions and the symbolism. And yeah, I'm finding nothing but humans. And I'm finding a whole lot of, we're like giving our kind of like human potential and heritage away to fiction in a way. But that doesn't mean that our spiritual experiences aren't real. It's just that it feels as though, whether it's by some sort of collective ego or by some nefarious force, we don't really know yet. It's too deep. History is too fuzzy. But in some way or another, it's like the perception of all of this has been kind of harnessed or corralled in a way. It's a big topic to get into for sure, but that's kind of the general idea. And I get yelled at a lot, people thinking that I'm kind of like some sort of mundane normie who doesn't believe in anything mystical, because I'm trying to say that a lot of history seems like it's been fictionalized. And I think that does have something to do with how we perceive our own spirituality too. So
yeah. You're already firing on all cylinders.
I guess so.
No, but I love that. I also like the deep shares, you know. I think, well, on the one hand, let me say myself, I have the probably similar psychedelic origins to my awakening, or to my beginning to question the nature of reality. But actually, if I go back even a little further, in high school, when we started learning, I studied here. We separate when we are like 16, 17, it separates into 3 branches. So you have the humanities, the biology, let's say, and the science. So from there, I did sciences, and then I did engineering. On the following year, you choose again within the one you chose before. There's a couple options, and I chose engineering. So I studied a lot of physics, and there we started studying quantum physics. Before, nice. I had ever heard anything about the observer effect or superposition or blah blah blah, etc. All those weird things about quantum. So I came there like absolutely fresh, and they started teaching me all these things that inside me started to resonate. I was never atheist, but I was also not like a believer, because the only like scope or the only reference I had for religion was the church, and I simply didn't resonate. I understood.
Right.
I even envied people who had faith, because I was like, oh wow, to be able to have faith in something so impossible to see, or to that was something cool for me. But then in physics, studying quantum physics, it started to make sense to me that wow, what I'm learning here about positive and negative charge, and the thing coming here and appearing from out of nowhere, it like resonates with the little that I know about religion. And I was very mind blown by that. So then I started like digging a little bit deeper into metaphysics, and more from a kind of what we could call woo-woo side today. But like, how does reality create itself, or appear, or happen? Started looking into that, and eventually found these things about manifestation, reality creation, the feeling is the secret, those kind of things.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit too much for me, so I put it aside for some time and continued more on the esoteric thing of going into metaphysics, and more like a mental kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely resonate with that too, with like kind of putting some of that aside. Probably a decade ago, total full-blown tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist, psychedelic psychonaut.
Yeah, I went on that trip as well after 2001.
But still, for some reason, even in that perspective that I was living in, I couldn't touch any of the magic stuff and the metaphysics stuff. I found that to be like hippy dippy, and I'm like, nah, that stuff's all missing the point. And psychedelics are about like grounding, not ascending. And I've come to the realization it's kind of just both. You have to ground first in order to ascend. It's a little bit of both.
Yeah, that's true. That's beautiful.
But you brought up
quantum.
You were talking about quantum physics. What's your take on the multiverse? I like to ask this of people.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. How can I put it into words, man? One, it's like it's an answer that would take me like a million years to actually reach the end of my answer, but to kind of start looking at it, I think. Or it's not just thought, it's kind of, so I've worked with, and I work with the Akashic records. And so from there, I mean, that's a whole other rabbit hole, but from there I've received stuff that resonates true with me. So it's valid for me. And I've understood that, for example, we think, and I think this idea is already kind of resonating with people like ourselves. The idea of past lives, for example, being more like parallel lives. So time, instead of being a line, is perhaps a point or a circle or an infinite regression, and I correct the number 8 or whatever. And we think about past lives, and I've understood them as parallel lives. So what I'm thinking there is, okay, at the same time, one of my past lives is happening right now in a kind of parallel frame of the movie. So in a way, that is happening in a parallel universe, which in some fashion connects to the universe of my current life, maybe to put it some way. It connects in the sense that parallel universe is the past of this one, or something like that, right? So it's parallel, but at the same time, there is a kind of line between them, and that is happening in many, in many dimensions and directions and ways. So multiverse, I'm like, yeah, I think but at the same time, it's all just one universe that has that shape or that a fractal form, that pattern that repeats all over everything.
You said my favorite word, fractal.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I like your take on that, man. I really do. Because a lot of times I find that I disagree with, like, not people that take it seriously, but it seems like the word multiverse is just abused and thrown around all over the place. And I think like Hollywood doesn't help because it kind of gives us this very physical material, like, yeah, you're gonna just like jump into another dimension and you're gonna physically, you yourself, you get to hold on to this ego and this persona right now, but you get to jump into this entirely different timeline. I feel like that would melt your brain or melt consciousness if suddenly like because who is this you that is this, that's in multiple places, right? I run into this a lot in my head because I constantly am fascinated by the law of one and the idea that it's all just one thing. And that gets, I mean, man, I find it in mythology, it's written about in certain ways like that. You know, when you as a psychedelic guy, you know, when you kind of read something from history or from a religion or something, and it directly relates to like a feeling you got on the other side during a trip or something, it just it sends tingles all over you, like, whoa, how did that, wait, they've known this all along, how did this happen, you know?
Yeah, and culturally, for some years, we went down this rabbit hole that, oh yeah, everything is because the ancients did psychedelics. But it's more because this one thing is present in everything, and so it doesn't matter where you get the I don't know, the download,
the knowledge,
or
yeah. The gnosis. Yeah. That's, I love that you said that, man, because I've been kind of battling that too. Cause it seems like that's the trend where, again, the heroes of hidden history out there are all kind of framing everything so perfectly. We got the Younger Dryas theory from Randall Carlson. We got, you know, certain lines of dating and lines of thinking from like Graham Hancock and big names. Not that they're not doing very interesting work, but yeah, it's kind of like, again, we got this like corralling going on where it's like very a limited hangout almost, you know, it feels like that, where suddenly whoever's on Rogan is basically the new philosophy that the subculture is going to take on. Like, oh, that guy was saying they found evidence of you know, psychedelic oils or whatever in those old Roman caves or whatever. So now, okay, so religion is all just psychedelics. Got it. And it's funny to me because I feel like I remember going through that false ideology coming out of psychedelics, because the religion connection made perfect sense right away. I was like, oh my God, this is clearly from psychedelics. This, all the religions, that makes so much sense. But then as I started to follow the psychedelic path and get into like Eastern meditation and Eastern mysticism in general, you know, I started to realize, oh, wait, we can just do this without any help. You know, the psychedelics aren't doing anything to our brains. They're literally just holding a door open. Like, hey, you guys have been locked in there this whole time, you know?
Yeah, and I think it's, you mentioned the law of one, you know, I think the prison that we're locked in is this prison of duality, of thinking the self and the world as two separate things. And the trend that I see happening, perhaps slowly or perhaps at the correct pace, is this thing of where we are kind of merging the third person perspective with the first person perspective. So the first person would be like when you, right now you're looking out of your eyes and sensing out of your human body, but then there's a part of us that is, to put it in a kind of metaphorical way, it's looking from above the character, you know, like in a game, and it has access to more information that is outside of the 3D world. So it's on the other side, like you say, you know, and that self is both shared by all of us. So it would be in Eastern terms Brahman, but at the same time, it kind of subdivides itself into different souls or different Atmans, right? Which would be, so maybe we have this first person perspective looking out your eyes. The third person, we could say, is the, or maybe no, let's call it the third perspective. The third person is this Atman, and then there's something that is even larger than all of that, or containing all of that, which paradoxically is also nothing,
Dude, I was just gonna say that.
So that's why it's so funny. We're trying to solve a whole bunch of mysteries that it feels like, on the one hand, they are real because they happen in this 3D world, but at the same time, they are created by the illusion that is this world, by the illusion of language. It's like, you create a problem only because of the way you're thinking about something. And when you change your perspective, you realize, oh, that wasn't a problem. That was actually one of my greatest gifts in life. But I was looking at it in a way that made it seem like a problem. And it's like we're doing that in the most complicated way,
Yeah, it's like calling them math questions, or instead of math problems. I heard that once from someone. Yeah, that's just in your perspective. Yeah, because it feels like sometimes that reality itself is a question. Maybe not a problem, that's the perspective, but it's like a question, like, what if? It almost feels like that, because when you were saying how the further out you go and the bigger you get, all of a sudden it's actually paradoxically nothing. It's like a pregnant void. It's almost like the expression, I'm so tired I can't even sleep. Or I have so many things to do, I can't do anything. It's like everything is so everything that it's just nothing. It's just an absolute paradox. And I think that's the point. I think we're here. We're like, I can't remember who it was, but someone kind of put it like, we're all like different realities flabbergasted into existence at the same time. Mm-hmm. Like we're all together going, oh my God, we're here. Why? Who are we? I don't know. Oh my God. I guess let's just hold each other tight, because what else is there to do, right?
Yeah, nothing else. Yeah. And everything we're doing to solve those questions brings up new questions, which we think, oh, now we have to solve all of this. And again, fractally, it's opening and it's infinite.
Following the fractal.
I think Terence McKenna gave this idea of this analogy of lighting a fire in the darkness. You light the fire and it reveals more darkness. And then you light another fire and the only thing it reveals is that there is, at the end of the light, let's say, of the reach of the light of the fire, there's even more darkness. And it's like that. We're lighting fires thinking that we're going to reach a destination or a point where we say, oh, I have figured everything out. And there is this impulse of like trying to figure everything out there, thinking that the only way or the only place to figure things out is out there. But like you were mentioning about Eastern mysticism, we start learning, and quantum physics, we start learning that it's all happening in here, inside of us. I don't know how else to put it.
Or even like, let's go a step further and say that you get to a point where you realize that the concepts of inside and outside are just another duality.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the point I think I'm trying to get to. It's like it's both things at the same time. You have the first person perspective and the third person at the same time. Right. And a kind of part of the trick is learning to synchronize those two and be able to access and live your life from either of those without attachment, which is not easy. This is just like a kind of theoretical framework I'm trying to express. But
hell yeah,
not forgetting, we keep forgetting because the 3D world becomes so overwhelming sometimes that we keep forgetting that there is something else. And whatever helps you remind yourself that there is something else, that's absolutely precious, and you should enjoy it for as long as it lasts. And sometimes it's meditation, sometimes it's watching a show on TV. There's shows on TV that are kind of mind-blowing recently, and if it helps you remember who you are, which is not just the thing that you are aware of, in waking life, but something else, that thing that goes to sleep and wakes up the other day, and this person doesn't quite remember the 8 or whatever hours, but something is there while you're asleep. and at the same time that something is nothing. And so it's that paradox, that Buddhist paradox of you are nothing actually, but
Right.
not something bad. Alan Watts, I'll let you talk, sorry, but
Oh,
Alan
no
Watts,
worries. No, go ahead.
Alan Watts, I remember he said the me I don't know, something about the meaning of life, and his conclusion is that there is no meaning, and we keep, from our perspective, we think that there being no meaning is something bad, but it's
Right.
actually the fact that it has no meaning implies that you can make whatever meaning you want out of it, because it's just free. Do whatever you want, and if this is meaningful to you, go ahead and do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot. Let me so the idea of free will fascinates me too, because at least in this physical context, let's not say that the Big Bang was the beginning, but it seems plausible that the universe is kind of like breathing in and out, perhaps. So maybe there is a big crunch and another, a cycle of in and out like that, maybe. But if that is the case, that at least our physical situation does seem to be like a theatrical play in a way, where things are atoms down to tiny everything, every little atom, everything is playing out off of that big movement outwards, that big breathing out or explosion, whatever you want to like picture it. And I just find that interesting because like we also have the problem with time and how it's not linear. It's also not even really people don't even really think it's the fourth dimension. That's just convenient for the way we do physics, even that time is most likely something that consciousness uses here in duality, like almost to hold everything together in a way. Because without linear time, how do you characterize yourself? Who is this self without time? You could take space away. I get that, because you can keep thinking, but you're thinking in a linear fashion. I know you can jump to different memories, but you have a stream of thought that's moving in a forward direction that you would have to look back on, gather some of it up, at least a segment of it, and go, yeah, this is who I am. I like these bands because I've been listening to these bands for a while. I think these things because I've been reading these books the past 6 months. We put things together over time. I am who I am now because of everything I've done up until this point. So I'm just curious. I'm just putting these little nuggets out there to see kind of what your thoughts are on this, because these are conundrums that I come into, because I hear all this, we came here for a purpose or a reason or to learn a lesson and all this, or we came here intentionally. And I wonder, what lessons can we learn that we haven't already learned? And what experiences could we, I don't know. It seems like a paradox again. I'm going to leave you with that and see what you come up with.
It is a paradox. That's kind of one of the hard pills to swallow, it's to keep remembering that this thing that you are, the way that I understand it, or that I put it to myself, is this third and first person. It's like you are living two lives at the same time in a way. So and one of the lives keeps forgetting about the larger one, to put it in a way,
right,
and starts asking questions within the box. And it's like, oh, how is this possible if I live in a box? But then you remember, oh no, actually I don't live in a box. This
right.
box is one experience that I'm having, and I am more that higher self than this one, in the sense that one is like, it's the player and the character in the game.
Mm-hmm.
You can play many different characters, and they are born, they live, they die. Then you play another character, and for the time that you're playing one character, you are both the player and that character. But then you move to another one, and you are still the player. That doesn't change, and now you are a new character. and that keeps continually happening, and everything the character does is important to the character and to the player, but not in an absolute way. It's important,
or a desperate way.
it's important as far as it gives, like you say, something new to the higher self, I guess. So
Okay.
but at the same time, it's so paradoxical, because since everything in the character's world is illusory, like time and the different lifetimes, this higher self already knows everything. There is nothing new that we are sending back to the mothership.
Right.
But at the same time, we are, because from the perspective of the character, we are mining for information and sending it back. But when it reaches, it was always already there, because the game is being played within the self as well. It's so complex to put into words.
I love it. No, dude, you just made me think of something, because during a lot of psychedelic trips that I've read about and my own as well, it's a return to who you are, right? So as above, so below, maybe whatever we call God is going through that same process. And this is his trip or its trip. I know. So that's the hard thing. You put a persona on it, and immediately it doesn't make any sense, because there are no personas out there, or where is there? It's not a there. It's a nothing. It's a potential.
I think it's okay to use the tool of language and using these personifications, as long as we don't forget that we are that thing also, and
right,
that thing isn't different or separate or in a distance or away from us. We are those things at the same time. And as I was speaking just before, you also made me realize that we are the character, we are the player, but we are also the world in which the character is moving.
Right. Yeah, that foreground versus background thing. Correct. Again, or subject versus object. It's such an interesting duality to play with. Man, we're already at the bottom of the rabbit hole, man. This is crazy. We're only 40 minutes in. We're already at the very bottom. Like, what should we talk about now?
Well, for me, the most important thing after doing all this, we could call it, and I hope this word is okay with YouTube, mental masturbation. Because in the end, it's like, okay, what is all of this information useful for in your life, in your third person human being life, right? Because whether it's true or not, and whether it's an illusion or Maya, a Lila, or whatever or not, the fact is that if you hit yourself, you feel pain. If somebody tells a joke, you feel happiness and laughter. After a certain time, you need to go to the bathroom, you need to sleep, you need to connect with other people. So all of those things, that's the paradox again, despite their illusory nature, they are at the same time true. You have free will, but at the same time you don't, because you are free to do something that as soon as you do it, it turns out you were always going to do it, but you do make the decision to do it, and you feel the consequences of that, and you affect others around you. So long story short, for me, the most important thing about all of these ideas is to bring it back to basics and say, okay, what I know, kind of like Descartes, I think, therefore I am. I don't know if I like the way he put it particularly, but I know that I'm here, that I'm real, that I'm feeling, that I am, that there is this body here, and this mind, etc., which feels stuff and is interacting with the world. So how can I improve this or polish this so as to live my most ideal life, and to have the best influence on myself and on those around me and on whoever I meet, smiling at a stranger in the street. We live in cities with millions of people, and barely ever do we say hi to anybody we cross in the street. You know, we might cross 150 people every day on the street, and we look away, or if they look at you, you're like, what the hell does he think looking at me? You know, but when you go to small towns, everybody's like, hey, hi, you know.
Yeah.
But
I find it on the mountains too, man. I'm a mountain climber. I love hiking, and it's the friendliest place. It brings it out of me too. The most jaded person on the streets, I'm like the friendliest guy out in the mountains, you know.
I think it's because we, in those places with less distractions, we have naturally more time for self observation or whatever. Not to say that people in small towns are enlightened, or all of them, or they might be like even further away than other people, but you have more time to be in connection with like your interactions with other, and your I don't know, your bubble, you know, your close bubble. And that is the bottom line for me. We get to the bottom of this rabbit hole, like you were saying, and what do we find there? It's like, okay, now when you go out on the street, how are you going to treat people? How are you going to respond to the way others treat you? Okay, yeah, you're God and you're everything and you're nothing, but then you snap at people, or you are very, very sad when sad things happen. How do we learn to like balance those things and live a kind of peaceful life, a more serene and harmonious life, while at the same time exploring all these things that awaken curiosity in our minds? Because there's nothing wrong with going down rabbit holes, as long as you keep the bottom line in mind, which is it helping you live a better life, a more aligned life, aligned with, I don't know, there's some basic values that we all kind of know intuitively, you know, not hurting others, trying to be helpful and have fun, and you know, it's not that complicated.
The service, the community and the service, especially. It's back to that, like, we're here, what do we do? Hold tight, because you know what better? I mean, I think that's why, you know, we say love is all and everything, because in this flabbergasted moment that we're all experiencing together, I mean, consciousness just comes to the realization that, like, you have to be, like, you know, in unity, because what else are you going to do for this one moment that's here, you know? Is this beautiful thing that we're experiencing, you know? If that makes any sense.
And
but this oneness we're talking about, this back to basics, you know, the third person versus first person, you know, it's interesting to think that, like, our version of mysticism, because we're so, generally speaking, unguided, we can just fall into so many different, like we're talking, like, rabbit holes. And I guess to bring it back to the beginning, this is kind of why, or the main reason why, I'm so interested in our history and kind of untangling those weird lines. Because if what I'm suggesting about history is true, it only leads closer to what you and I are talking about, this oneness. And if each and every one of us has this inner child, this ego, this shell that we create to protect us and, you know, kind of keep us in this lower state sometimes, perhaps humanity has that as well. You know, everything is fractal, right? So all of us together, like I was saying before, it's almost like God has an ego, where it's like we have this side of us that comes into physical reality in the form of control and power and greed and violence and narcissism. All these things are kind of like the product of the ego desperately trying to hold on to something, you know? I mean, the fear of death, right? If everyone on the planet knew, or had the perspective, at least from you, me, and a number of other people we know, on what life and death really is, you know, our entire civilization would be wildly different, you know?
Yeah. Not to say that we don't fear death. I mean, I'm not going to talk for you, but
of course not. No, I do too. Yeah, of course.
But it's like when you fear death in a certain way, it's like you there is a part of the connection to your higher self that isn't present at that moment, I guess. Because if you remembered and knew all the time that you are infinite and immortal, why would you worry about death? I mean, I know I'm immortal. There's no fear of death. But if there is fear, and maybe it will always be there, you know, it's like at the same time, how would a limited being not be afraid of death if it knows it's going to die? But it's like the paradox again. You can be afraid of death, and I guess, and not at the same time, because a part of you will always protect you. Like if there's danger, even if you don't know there's danger, in some way you will like try to cover yourself, or intuition will pop up or whatever. But at the same time, this other part of you doesn't fear death, but it will protect the body, you know, because the purpose of the body was to be here until it's not here, you know. So there will be it's okay to be afraid of death. It's kind of what I guess I'm trying to say. And there's something natural. Else, but I'm not catching whatever else was there.
Well, let's take it to like what we were talking about before. It's just the way we perceive it, right? Is it a question or is it a problem? You know, death can be something to, you know, the fear of death can be something to look at negatively, or we can say that this particular fear is so personal and so deep, it's kind of everything. It could very well be the essence of, you know, just like humanity's general trauma, just the knowledge that we have to let go. You know, I mean, I guess let's tie it into like how we claim or we think in antiquity there might have been a part of our civilization that was kind of at peace in a way, or advanced spiritually to the point where they understood, they kind of lived through allegory, and that's where they use symbols. They understood the self-similarity of all things and all that. Whereas we are so far removed from that mentality, it's so hard to place ourselves into that third person view. You know what I mean? It's not a normal thing for us to be an adept and, you know, initiated into anything like these things. It's so random, but it is seemingly becoming more and more prominent around the world, it seems. But
I think so. Yeah. So let me round up something that I kind of remembered, which is, and at the same time, this thing about death or whatever else, it's also okay that, for example, let's say, okay, yeah, fear of death may always be there in the body or in the mind, but at the same time, your relationship to that fear might evolve with time, you know, and one day it might be that, or let's say an enlightened person, we could say from when they are in this, I don't know how to put it, but in the, let's say, okay, so for example, maybe the Buddha was afraid of death, and at the same time he wasn't, you know, because when he's standing from the self, there is nothing to fear. But when you're standing from the person, whatever baggage or whatever, it's not just baggage, but whatever qualities are with the person, they will be there anyways, you know. And I wanted to recommend a book to you, because I think you're gonna love it. It talks a lot about these ideas of the mystic side, the mystic interpretation of life, and you've talked a lot about the symbolic language and talking in allegory and all those kinds of things. So I don't know if you can read it, if it's
Merchants of Light. Who wrote this?
This is written by Betty J. Kovacs. She's amazing. Okay. I'm gonna have her on the show very soon. I've had her, she's been twice already, but we're gonna do a series exploring all her book, because it's a magnificent book. You should look it up and see the contents. I think you're gonna love it.
Definitely.
But I mean, everybody has so much already on the reading list that you'll see.
I keep adding them. I keep adding them on.
You'll see if it calls to you. But yeah,
I'll get them to them eventually. You know,
this has been my favorite book of all time. And,
oh wow, that's awesome!
I'm really loving
I'll definitely
it.
check it out.
And excited that you know that we have the possibility of of having all these, like I call them the elders, you know, even though in our society, and even those of us who are like-minded, even though we haven't been able to get formal, let's say, initiations or coming of age ceremonies that have existed for so long and do exist in other cultures, and that is part of the what do we call this, the neurosis of our civilization or of our society today, is these moments that should be marked on the subconscious mind more strongly, you know, in order to like know that you've taken another step. We don't have those things. But anyways, what we do have is these elders, you know, people like you and I who have been like you and I for longer than we, and we are, I guess, thanks to them and the people before them and to ourselves, we are kind of slowly building this renaissance, you know. And she talks a lot about there's been different renaissances of a particular mystic tradition, which is more I don't want to get into the specifics because I'm going to screw up the the actual thing, but there's this mystic tradition that in a way we all share because it's connected to how we developed as a species, you know. It's like the mystic stuff that came out of us naturally, you know, and it's connected with the symbolic language that you were speaking, you know. One of the things, the most interesting things that I read here that stuck with me is how first we develop symbolic language, and then from the symbolic language comes the rational language, and we've kind of, and that's the feminine and the masculine, and we've lost ourselves in this masculine, and that's everything we're seeing today in society is connected to how we have repressed the feminine, which is the subconscious, the psychedelic, the other side, the oneness, etc. And that's where we are going, you know. The renaissances are bringing back those understandings and those gnosis, and well, it's an awesome book, and I don't know if you want to comment on that.
That sounds amazing already, especially the symbolic language and everything. It's really cool. Some of the research I'm digging into is like about the symbolic languages and the old alphabets, and how originally the sounds that the symbols made, and even the shape of the symbols respond to how they're spoken orally. It's all fractally connected. I'm putting together like a little bit of a very woo-woo hypothesis about it as well, where like some of the threads I'm looking into, kind of some of our oldest, weirdest stories kind of allude to this these metaphors of our marriage with the animal kingdom, basically, and like kind of showing us how we came right up out of nature. And I honed in on the idea that like early man would follow animals to know what to do. Like herds of animals know where the food is going to be. They know when the bad weather's happening. They know when the seasons are changing. And whether we were following them, I mean, this is how anthropology is written, at least, is that we were just following them to see what to do, or perhaps we also were going their directions because we, like them, have this innate understanding of how everything works on like a biological level even. And it seems like the conscious side and the biologic side are kind of interwoven there. And it's like, it's just in our blood. It's in our consciousness. We innately know how things work, I guess. I don't know. It feels that way.
I think that's true, you know, and maybe what the anthropologists are saying is like after a certain period, we developed or got lost in the rational language and forgot, you know, that natural thing. Because our bodies are animals. That's another one that we keep forgetting, you know. Our bodies are, whether we want to say it's a kind of ape or monkey or whatever or not, or whatever, extraterrestrial, whatever it is, it's an animal, basically. It's a flesh and blood animal that has instincts, etc. Though they're kind of what do we call this, latent or kind of asleep or underused, right? But probably we were, like you were saying, in this oneness with nature, in this connection. I'm not trying to fantasize it, or but
No.
we were probably in whatever way animals to this day are in connection to nature. I think we shared that to a point. You know, we had probably a different expression of it, as every animal perhaps does. But then I
Yeah.
guess something happened that is probably connected with this development of this other part of our awareness, of our consciousness. We could call this
The
the
rational
rational
mind.
language. And
Yeah.
I don't know why that got apparently out of hand, or the whole point of that development was to get out of hand so that it could be merged back, you know, like again the splitting to return, the big bang and the big crunch. I don't know, because
Yeah, prodigal son returns, man.
we keep
It's
projecting our opinion onto things in nature that have no meaning, like Alan Watts was saying, right? It's like, oh
yeah.
yeah, no, it's horrible the way society is going, and the artificial intelligence and the techno
Right.
something and whatever. Yes, it is, if you want things to go your way and you don't agree with that, right? Which I'm not
Right.
saying that I agree with that, but I'm saying if you don't care either way, if you look at from the higher self, it's like, yeah, shit is happening on Earth, and let's just look at the Sims and what's happening, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's so many threads, and yeah, the rational mind thing, getting lost in that. It's almost like, I'm sure you've heard the term default mode network, right? It's another way, a fancy way of saying basically like the reduced survival mode consciousness of everyday life, as opposed to the psychedelic landscape or the meditative landscape, whatever you want to call the other side of that heightened awareness. And it kind of feels like that same duality where we lost, or we were reduced. Like the rational mind did what it does, it put everything in boxes, including itself, you know. It's crazy. And to think that maybe that makes sense, that the unhinged free roaming conscious stream of free thought, of, you know, experiencing reality raw, I guess you could say, or at least the image of reality raw instead of through these reductions, is probably what animal life is. And if there's a flow, and you and I are kind of talking about the fractal nature of everything, and you look at animals, they never go outside of what they're supposed to be doing, right? It's kind of rigorous and it's boring, right? We get to be creative and, you know, write on walls and whatever, but they literally just eat, shit, sleep, mate, repeat. And they just survive. And we look at it that way. It's just survival, right? And then I don't know, I've been kind of looking at the whole archaic revival idea, and it's like, man, people are not ready to go back to the archaic way of living, because it's basically like our version of animalistic living, you know, the oldest heathen pagan cultures, the proto Germanic people, or even before that, you know. It's like we're talking about this kind of consciousness where they're like literally surviving and going with the flow of everything. And I think there's all that beauty that we have taken for granted and we long for now, and we're kind of getting back in a lot of our spiritual understanding of things now. What we're kind of longing for is that old way of there is no creativity or individuation. I don't think it's more like just understanding how things flow, and once you do, there's no worry to do anything else. And that's kind of, Alan Wattsy right there, right? He's very much the person that says, there's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to go, and there's nowhere else to be. There's no one else to be. It's all happening right now. I don't know.
Yeah.
That was a big matzo ball.
Something you said in there clicked. Let me kind of fetch it. About our how we the thing about just surviving and all that.
Mm-hmm.
What did I want to say about that? There was something interesting, I think. Well, I'll tell you what I something that came also.
Sure.
On a recent mushroom experience,
Yeah.
I was so my cat came in I like I opened the door of the house and the cat came in, and I was sitting with the door to my left, and she came in through the door through my left side, and I had this, I don't know how to explain it because in words it's just ridiculous, but it was this like overwhelming sense, like, oh wow, the feminine is coming in.
Oh,
It was
that's cool.
so intense, like I was, and this is something, okay, well, this might be another big rabbit hole. I don't know how you are on time.
Don't have much time, but we can always do a part two, brother.
Awesome,
sure.
awesome. So okay, I'm gonna finish this story. So something that I felt is like, oh wow, that opening of the door was symbolic of something that I opened within me with the aid of the mushrooms. Something that I opened within me that allowed the feminine, the mysterious. It was dark, so it was also night, the night and the animal nature, the subconscious, the feminine to come in. So I did a kind of ritual, and intentionally it was just opening the door, something we do every day, and letting the cat in. It happens every day. But that particular day, it was like, oh wow, look at what just happened. And this reminds me of how in this paradoxical thing of the two different persons, that the two different lives we're living, and that third element in that kind of equation that is the world, right? The world, we tend to again push it away and say, oh, the thing is over there and it has nothing to do with me. But what I've also come to understand, and I'm still processing that, is that everything that's in our perception is a reflection of our inside. So the outside is the inside in a way that is like almost literal, and or more than literal, symbolic, and
I like that you said that's more than literal. I like that.
And it's like, for example, those basic things. Okay, so clean up your room. Why? Because for some reason the way your room is a reflection of how your inner state is, of your mind. If you live in a dirty or crowded place, it kind of reflects that your mind is that way. And what does that even mean? It's like the kind of line that I draw between the two ideas is that everything. So for example, this, and I'm not going to use the microphone because it's like for talking to you today, but let's say you have a glass on the table,
Yeah.
It's kind of like, or the general disorder in a person's room. It's like every circle that you open in your mind, so a thought, a worry, a problem, a this, a that, an attachment, an aversion, a happiness, a rejection, a sadness, we kind of project it onto the world in a symbolic way, like psychically create. It sounds so, but it always has to meld or work within the 3D bounds. So okay, yeah, you manifest the thing that you are projecting your neurosis onto, but the way you manifest it is you go to a store and you buy it and you bring it to your house, right? Unless you are extremely advanced in this and you can, but at the same time, if you are so advanced, you probably won't manifest a disorganized house, right? But it's like everything that is in place in your house is like something that's in your mind that for some reason you don't want to think about it, so you send it to the subconscious, and when you send it to the subconscious, you send it to the world. It's like the world is your subconscious. And one final idea, imagine you go into outer space and you travel all the way. I have this idea that at the end of space is the inside of your head, let's say. You know what I mean? So if you would reach like a black hole, you would come out the other side through your eyes again. It's like a loop, or even through somebody else's eyes, and that's like parallel lives and whatever.
Mm,
And I don't know why I could go forever
I dig
with
that.
stuff like this. Yeah.
I dig that. No, it reminded me kind of a, I guess, an experience or thought, whatever, that I
Yeah.
had on psychedelics, which was that this, like the our idea of karma, our human way of understanding karma. I mean, it's really just like like action and reaction in a way. Um, that we may be able to put together a conscious reason why we have chosen to come here, but it's almost as if as soon as you go to that bright light, you're coming out the same mom you just did, or something like that. And it's a loop, like a literal loop. And like, I had a really interesting feeling on psychedelics, and I've gone back there, like it's a place. Um, and every time I go back there, I have this same feeling where, and I've come out of this feeling like a friggin' warrior into the scene because of this, that there's something very, very specific and special about the way our eyes see the world that we create out there. And if this is us and our, this is me, right? The world is my subconscious. Then every image and every piece of it is me. Then it's, oh man, this is so hard to put into words, of course, but it's like, it felt like, in a way, I guess the worst way to put it is like that we would live the same life over and over again. But that's just a perception. It's more like whatever you want to call that, perceives the world the same way every time. Maybe just from a different point of view, perhaps. I don't know. Another random thought,
That's an
but
interesting way
it did
to put
remind
it.
me of that black hole thing really did remind me of that, like the looping idea.
Yeah.
Because I remember feeling like, okay, there's no time. So at one point I felt very ancient. I felt like an ancient giant that had lived eons and eons. Then at another point where everything was like sped up, and it felt like the lives were going over and over and over and over again, and everything was deja vu.
Wow.
No matter what I did or said to a friend or saw on the television, everything had this utterly overwhelming, overpowering deja vu feeling. And yeah, I don't know what to make of it, especially with so many people having so many, like, I want to try to believe most anecdotal experiencers perceptions about things. I have a hard time with, yeah, I was from Atlantis, let me tell you all about it. You know what I mean? That I do have a hard time with that, but maybe that's just because of this experience I had. I don't know. What is your take on the whole like loop thing if it were to come to our, I don't know.
No, that's just chemical imbalances in your brain, Andy. We're going to send the ambulance to your home right now.
Okay, I figured. I was waiting.
I had a big a kind of a challenge with the idea of, when people are saying, oh, and I want to say something about astrology. So
Cool.
But before I'm going to say this thing. So when people say like, oh yeah, I am from, like you say, for example, Atlantis, or I am from the Pleiades, I am from Arcturus.
Right.
But when that clicked for me, in part thanks to my connection to the Akashic records, when that clicked for me was when I kind of relaxed the definition of I and stopped projecting my own definition onto others and started looking and saying, okay, what does this person even mean when they say, I am from the Pleiades? So, okay, probably they are not referencing their body, and they are referencing another part of themselves with which they maybe identify more or are identifying more at the moment or something like that. And then you start looking into all of this alternate history research, and there is the ideas of galactic wars and planets colliding into each other, and different species coming here or going over there and whatever. And you're like, oh, right, okay, so maybe a soul that perhaps incarnated physically, or maybe it didn't need that, but perhaps a physical incarnation on another star system, then incarnated here on Earth today, and it's this person is the vehicle that is carrying that soul, who has remembered a little bit about that journey, you know?
Yeah.
And they are
I can
saying,
get down with
I am from Cygnus. And somebody from the outside might say, okay, yeah, send the straight jacket for this guy because he's crazy, you know? But and at the start, I never would say they're crazy, but I would say like they're like misguided or shallow in the way they're thinking. But now I kind of understand what that might be about, you know? And I have my own beliefs about perhaps the journey of my own soul, which of course I don't know for sure, but through different kind of other side contacts, I've had certain validations for myself. So, and at the same time, it's like, what does that serve my current life, right? Because that's the only thing that I really have, like we were saying before.
Right. And plus, if it's co-creation, I mean, you know, I always reference a Harry Potter quote at the very end. Have you seen all the Harry Potter movies or read any of the books or anything by chance?
You can say it. I know about it. I haven't watched all.
Okay, fair
because
enough.
I'm not that into the but I know
that's
about
fine. I soak up these kind of stories and movies because I know they're just dripping in allegory.
I love more Lord of the Rings is more my stuff.
Oh, I am all oh man, that'll be a whole nother topic for us someday, man. But in Harry Potter near the end, they're in this very in-between place, Harry and Dumbledore, who's already dead. So he, you know, they're in between existence. And it's the scene where Voldemort is defeated, and it seems like his little ego is just shrunken and curled up into the fetal position under a bench, just withering away, feeling sorry for itself. And that's all that's left of him or something. And Harry asked Dumbledore, is this real or is it all in my head? And Dumbledore says, well, of course it's all in your head, Harry, but whatever gave you the idea that makes it not real? And it stuck with me because this was post psychedelics when I read these books, and I'm just like, oh damn it, that's the greatest line ever, because it just resonates so hard. Where, you know, a lot of people run wild with the manifestation stuff and they don't really get what you were saying, where you're literally manifesting how you're perceiving yourself and the world and everything. We can run wild with it, but at the same time, it is essentially true. And that, like, even though it's all in our heads, or maybe you don't know exactly for sure that your soul traveled to wherever you think it went, but because you're using your imagination, I guess, in a way, like, this is a whole nother topic kind of to get into, really. But like, if you're familiar with a guy named Neville Goddard, he's a excellent person to look into for this stuff, because he really believes that the human imagination is God. And that might even be like a rudimentary way to put it, but I think the essence of that is true, right? It's our access point to that pregnant void, that pregnant with possibility place, I guess.
Yeah, I think so.
I do want to get into the Akashic records with you, but we'll probably have to save it for another episode.
Yeah.
Because I really love that topic. I love how you have the very mystical side of it, which is very personal, and it can be interpersonal, but very psychedelic in a way. Yeah. And then you have this, you know, Indiana Jones hunt for like a physical hall of records, like under the Sphinx and stuff. And I just find it lovely because it's just as above, so below, right? We're desperately reaching for things in the material world. Maybe they're real. Maybe we will make them real, like a grimoire or something, because of how we feel about it, because it is real on a psychic level, right? Who knows? But I definitely want to get into that whole topic with you at some points.
That makes total sense, you know. And you know, just to round up the idea of the world being our subconscious mind.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, we were flying into outer space, and suddenly you start finding you find Mercury, you find Venus, you find Mars, you find Jupiter, etc. And that kind of helps give a kind of explanation for astrology. Why would it work? Well, because Jupiter is a reflection of an aspect of your mind. Mars is a reflection of another aspect of your mind, which is placed over there, out there. And at the same time, it's for you when you were born, it was at a particular place, so it was kind of manifested or extruded, or this other side of you that was over there and is over there now in connection with all the other things. So if everything outside of you is a projection of your mind, and the further you go, you're going deeper into your subconscious mind. It makes sense that your personality would be represented by the things that are so massive out there. Okay, according to science, there's planets in the sky, but that's a whole other thing. If whatever the heck is going on up there.
Yeah, dude. I love where you took this, man, because really I was just thinking how many different traditions considered like Jupiter the father or Saturn this or that. These archetypes go from the minuscule to the massive, the smallest thing in our universe to the biggest. And it really is a perfect representation of mind, because the further out you get, the less you know. The deeper into your mind you get, the more mystery there is. So I think this is a great place to hold up and stop for now. This is a really great time. I'm so glad that you reached out, man. I'm glad that I resonated with you on whatever you saw from Woo Wednesday. Shout out to Andreas and all the homies there. So please, Rafa, tell my audience where they can find you and your work.
Yeah, sure. If you want to talk, reach out. You can find me on Instagram. It's at Atman Rafa. It's just Atman, like Batman without the B, and then my name, Rafa, Atman Rafa on Instagram. Then YouTube. Oh, I can share. I have actually prepared, because I'm such a good boy. I have.
Ooh.
Can you see my screen?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So okay.
Mystic times.
Here's my channel. My channel is just on YouTube, Rafa Martinelli, and you can find. I started creating some guided meditation, but actually just one for now, guided meditation. But I also started putting out some of my music. It's like ambient and that kind of psychedelic kind of meditation and relaxation and tripping kind of music. And then
and tons of great interviews too.
I've got a bunch. So here's our friend Lindsay. We have a few.
Shout out to Lindsay from Rogue Ways.
With her and Michael Cremo, which you also talked about. You mentioned on email. Yeah.
Yes, excellent guest. He was one of my first. Like, I was just in awe that I could talk to him.
Yeah. Wow. He's such an awesome guy. He's so down to earth. So cool.
Such a pleasant, sweet man.
We've got so many here. And I've got some playlists. Let me see if this loads. Yeah. Divided into, here. Well, no, it's awesome. Just showing. Yeah. It's just showing my personal playlist. But I've divided. Oh no, here, yeah. I divided them into like themes and by guests and you mentioned the law of one earlier. I don't know if you know about the particular the law of one material, the Ra channelings.
No, I don't think so. I'm not sure.
Okay, you should get into this guy, Jim McCarthy. If you're interested, you find the playlist that I have with his name, or I think maybe it's called the Law of One. You're gonna love this information.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'll send you a few other links.
Absolutely.
So yeah, this is my YouTube, and over here for my people, we have the Deep Share podcast. Tell us a little bit about your show and where the people can find you.
Yes, please go to the Deep Share podcast on YouTube. That's kind of my main area. Other than obviously I'm on all the different podcast platforms and everything. But you can find me on YouTube and Odyssey to get the full video experience and all that. I'm on Twitter and Instagram as the Deep Share, ranting and stirring up things and kicking hornets' nests. So come follow me over there. And that's about it really. But Rafa, this has been really great, man. I love talking to you about this kind of stuff, and I want to get into a bunch of other topics with you for sure.
Yes. Yeah, I find it really cool. We are more or less on the same number. You're on 90 and I think I'm on close to that 81 over here.
That's awesome.
There's a few on the on the.
When did you start? When did you start putting out content?
I think this is season 3 right now. I'm calling it. I think it's been 3 years then.
Wow, awesome. I think
Um,
I'm coming up on like 2.5, getting towards 3 really soon.
yeah, around
Yeah,
that
that's
time,
awesome,
yes.
man. And
And I
and this is what I love the most, where like there's suddenly a good reason to just sit down with someone you've never met before and
Mhm.
find out you can like make some magic happen, you know? This is alchemy in my opinion.
Yeah, for
You know,
sure. Let
two
me
different
see.
perspectives coming into a new one.
This one came out July 14th. So I think I started recording on February or March of 2020. So
Excellent.
23
Cool, man.
today. Yeah. Yeah,
So you
around
can
3
imagine,
years.
folks, there's plenty to check out on his
No,
channel
no.
too.
And please check out Andy's stuff. We need to plug each other. This is so weird, this part when
Yeah,
we
we did
do
really
the
well. We did really well with the plugging.
awesome. Well, I like that you enjoyed it. Let me see. Is there anything else we're missing? Let me stop the share so we can say goodbye.
Yeah, man.
Well, I really had a great time. Yeah, and I'm
Likewise.
extremely happy also that you resonated when I wrote, because that's also so beautiful and important, to connect, like again, like McKenna was saying, to find the others, connect with the others.
Find the others.
Yeah,
Yes.
and be bold, and if there's somebody you're interested in talking to or connecting, and you're afraid of reaching out, the worst thing that can happen is they just don't reply to your email, but
Yeah, man.
don't
I've
don't
never
lose the
had a rude
opportunity.
person.
Yeah, don't lose
Yeah.
the opportunity to reach out to somebody that you think might help you live a more harmonious life, that bottom line that we were talking about. That's
Yeah.
the whole reason we're here, is to try to enjoy this life and have a great time. So
My
yeah.
favorite thing in the whole world that I've experienced over the past couple of years is having like someone that listens to my show reach out, and it gets more frequent, and I start to connect with them, and they're showing me all kinds of crazy stuff. And just like everybody does, I'll say to them, you should have a show, man. You should do your
Mm,
own thing. And I just love it. I haven't talked about it in a while, but it's just the listener becoming the participant, and it's
mm,
just happening more and more and more. And I think there's naysayers out there like, oh, what everybody's got their own shows, nobody's
yeah,
listening to anybody. No way. We're trying to take in as much as we can. We're listening to
yeah.
as many of each other as we
Mhm.
can.
Yeah, and it's a
So
bunch of us. I've actually had uh, listeners suggest guests, and I have those guests on, and it's amazing conversations. Again, very, very resonant. And I just remembered, I also started. So for those who prefer to listen on Spotify, the show is on Spotify too. I was looking to get the link before we started, and I I just couldn't find it. But I'm sure if you search for it, or
I
I'll
can
put it
find it
in
for you.
yeah, we can put it in the notes. And
Absolutely.
the other thing I would like to plug is I also have a Patreon. So if you guys are interested in donating or being helping out with the creation of the show and of my art, my music, etc., give it a check it out. And yeah, I hope you also had a wonderful time. I don't know if maybe you want to plug. You have a Patreon as well. You want to remind
I
people.
technically do, but to be honest, I think my 3 patrons are just a charity for that are just in support of my stuff, because I haven't put out much on Patreon for a long time. I just have so much going on all over the
Yeah,
place in my personal life and everything. Doing the show is a responsibility on its
yeah,
own,
yeah, yeah.
but I do want to put out more content. I do have a plan to release certain things on that side. So if you want to go check it out, I do have a good solid amount of content on there to check out at least. Um,
Mhm.
but it's just the Deep Share
Yeah, it's
podcast.
it's not easy, to put out more content. Sometimes you need help, and to get that help, you need money, because who's gonna
Sometimes,
work
yeah.
for free? And in that way, Patreon is an amazing service for us. Yeah, I don't have
Absolutely.
many Patreons either, but what I realized, again, this changing of perspective. I was looking at, oh man, I want to get X amount of Patreons, and I have this number, and it's like, oh, I'm failing, I'm not reaching my goal. And then
Oh,
I realized, because I also don't. For a while, I started putting out a second hour exclusively on Patreon, but then I
yeah.
realized they don't have like almost any views. It's like a waste.
Yeah.
So I started sharing them on the show. That's why some numbers are mixed up on the YouTube. But what I realized is this exclusive stuff that I'm sharing here has very little views, which means actually they had 0 views. I'm going to be honest. They had 0 views, but which means that the few amazing people that are on Patreon, they're actually there because they appreciate my content enough to just make a regular donation, you know? And that
Absolutely
warmed my heart so much because I was looking at myself as a failure because of the perspective I had taken. And then I looked at the thing from another perspective and realized, oh wow, this is like such a beautiful gesture from people, you know, to be sharing some of their money just because they like the content that I put out or the perspective that I share here. And so that made me connect with the appreciation actually, rather than the feeling of failure and lack mentality, you know?
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. So I had to be convinced to start a Patreon. My wife just kind of was like she was framing it and she felt like I was like lacking confidence or something, because I was saying like, what, you know, why do I need to put myself behind a paywall, blah, 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 blah. So like I had to be convinced to go on there in the first place, you know? So when I did get the 3 that I have, I am so thankful that they're there and I appreciate them. And I want to put out more content, and the plan is there. It's just the execution is another thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's back to that, like the no views thing too. Like only a couple people got to see this incredible conversation between me and so that I put on that, you know, all these different episodes. And yeah, there's something to that where it's just a balancing act, you know. But I really appreciate you, man. I appreciate everybody listening, and I appreciate those patrons, man. And yeah, we'll have to do this again soon for sure, man.
Yeah, of course. Okay, let's stay in touch. Thank you, everybody, for being there. Well, I don't know. There's nothing else to say. Thank you. Have a great
adios. Good
great
night.
week. We're sending you lots of love, and adios. Bye.
Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Deep Share Podcast. If you want to hear more, then hit that subscribe button. Follow me on all the social places. And remember, think for yourself, but don't always believe what you think. Till next time.
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, vegetarian. Enough, I get the point.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature. And you will atone.
What do we know? What do we know? If I know what we know, then I can tell you what we know, and if someone else knows, okay? I mean...